Merry Christmas and Happy Sabbath. Tonight I'm going to tell you a story, and the title of the story is called The Christmas Candle. It is in December 1664. Light exploded in the small house, making midnight seem as daylight. The bearded candle maker and his wife popped up in bed. What is that? She asked, trembling. The husband said, "Don't move." "But the children," the wife complained. "They are sleeping. Stay where you are," the husband ordered. The wife pulled the blanket up to her chin and took a quick look around the room. Children asleep on the floor, the table and chairs resting near the hearth, tools piled in a corner. The candlemaker didn't shift his wide-eyed gaze. The figure of light stretching from ceiling to the floor. His form moved. There's a torso, a head, and two arms. He reached out of the radiance and extended a finger to a rack of hanging candles. When he did, the couple awestruck and huddled for what comes next. The husband whispered a question. "Are you going to hurt us?" The visitor gave no reply. He waited as if to ensure the couple was watching. He touched one of the candles and then vanished. The room darkened and the just touched candle glowed. The husband stepping quickly out of bed and across the room, grabbing the candle just as the light diminished. He looked at his wife. She gulped. "What just happened?" she asked. "I don't know." He moved to the table and sat. She hurried to do the same thing. "An angel?" she wondered aloud. "Must be." He placed the candle on the table and both stared at it. Neither knew what to say or to think. The next morning found them still sitting, still staring. The children awoke, so they ate breakfast, dressed warmly, and together the family walked the half-mile up Bristol Lane to St. Mark's Church for one of the December Advent services. The candlemaker gave the pastor extra candles for the Advent service, but kept the angel-touched candle in his coat pocket. He started to mention the visitation of the angel to the pastor, but stopped short. He mumbled to himself, "The pastor won't believe me anyway." The couple tried to concentrate on the sermon, but couldn't. Their minds kept reliving the night, the light, the angel, and the touched candle. They shared a pew with a young mother and her two children. All three were disheveled and dirty. The couple knew her, knew how her husband, a servant to a baron, had died a month before in a hunt. After the service, the widow described her plight to them. "We have little food left, enough for a few days." The candlemaker's wife reached into her husband's coat pocket for a coin. When she did, she felt the candle. She handed both the coin and the candle to the young mother and said, "Light this and pray." As the young mother turned to leave, the wife looked at her husband and shrugged, as if to say, "What harm?" He nodded. The couple talked some more about the candle over the next few days, but not much. Both were willing to dismiss it as a dream, perhaps a vision. The Christmas Eve service changed that. The service began with a time of blessing sharing. Anyone in a congregation who wanted to give public thanks to God could do so. When the pastor asked for volunteers, the young mother stood up. That same widow who days earlier had appeared unkempt and hungry. And this night she beamed. She told the congregation how a wealthy uncle in a nearby county had given her a farm as a gift. The farm was a godsend. she could live in the house and lease the land and support her family. She looked straight at the candle maker and his wife, and she said, I prayed. I lit the candle and prayed. The couple looked at each other. They suspected a connection between the candle and the answer prayer, but who knew for sure? Fast forward 200 years later. Every 25 years, the angel would appear to the candlemaker's descendants in Gladstone. Thus, 3 generations passed. And each time the one who possessed the candle, his prayer was answered. The year now is 1864. The old pastor passed away and a new pastor came to this town. Pastor Richmond is young, sophisticated, but seemed unenthusiastic and reluctant about his assignment. The candlemaker Edward Haddington said to his wife Bee, I just think it is odd that Oxford would assign their top student to a village like ours. Well, a crowd of 60 went to welcome the new minister, and Edward gave him a tour of the village. It was a beautiful spring day, and the village was decked in her best fashion. Fine, high stone walls framed the fields. Puffy flock dotted the pastures. Crows scavenged seeds from melting snow. May clouds passed and parted, permitting sunlight to glint off the shallow creeks. The citizens remarked, a fine welcome to you, isn't it? Did you enjoy the tour? The minister answered simply, it was pleasant. December came. Villagers were excited because 1864 is the year. It would be the 4th appearance of the angel. Who would end up with the blessed candle? They all wondered. Every Christmas Eve, the minister in Gladstone usually devoted a few minutes to his congregation for blessing sharing. On every 25th Christmas Eve, besides blessing sharing, an additional testimonial time was given to the person who has the blessed candle. He would tell the congregation how his prayer was answered because of that special candle. Well, Christmas is almost here, and the village is anxious to know who will be the next lucky person. They also wondered whether the new pastor would allow time in the service for the candle testimony. Everywhere the pastor goes, someone will bring up the subject of the candle. He was curious about the history of the story. One day while he was visiting Edward Haddington's, the candle maker, they started to chat away about Christmas. After a while, he asked the candle maker about a special candle, and Edward explained to him about how it started. At the end of the story, Edward added, every quarter of a century, an angel would touch the candle. Every prayer that was offered over the candle was answered. The Christmas candle has become legendary, Bee, the candle maker's wife interjected. And so have the Haddington's candle makers. Even when the region had other candle shops, the angel only and always came to Papa Edward's descendants. The citizens of Gladstone have anticipated each candle maker's child, the way the rest of England awaits a royal heir. Which brings us to the hard part of this story. She looked at Edward. God gave us only one child, a son. He was born to us late in our life and died from cholera when he was only 20. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Was he married? The young minister asked. That he was. His wife died several months later in childbirth. My goodness, one tragedy followed the other. Indeed, it did. And your grandchild? Pastor Richmond asked. Edward didn't answer that question, but he said, as you see, Bee and I are alone. We are both in our 70s. we won't be having any more children. Does that mean the angel visits stop with you? We assume so. Pastor Richmond began reviewing the facts, counting them with his fingers. The angel comes once every 25 years? Edward nodded. He touches one candle? So far. And that candle has power? No. God has the power. The candle is just the what did you call it? The vessel. Yes, the candle is just the vessel. The young minister crossed his arms and looked out the window. B asked, "You find the story hard to believe, isn't it?" Pastor Richmond cleared his throat and looked back. It's not the type of event you hear about often. No, Edward agreed, far from it. How long since the last visit? Edward looked to Bea and let her answer the pastor. 24 years. 24? That means this is the year, she agreed. Goodness, no wonder everyone's talking about the candle. The conversation ends soon after that. Nothing else seemed worthy of mentioning. All in all, Pastor Richmond likes his congregation. They have been friendly, warm, helpful, truthful, and honest. However, he wished they were not so rural and they were not so backward. He had requested a transfer to London, Southampton, or at least Bristol. But the professor made it clear that no other opportunity were coming. He said, given the problems you have, Gladstone is your only option. To the same degree, the villagers of Gladstone also held the same opinion, that the pastor is not quite right for them. They were hoping for someone older, married, seasoned, but instead the young Pastor Richmond's here. This is the 25th Christmas, the anticipated Christmas. Everyone is talking. If I get the candle, I know what I'll pray for. Another person said, I hear Edward already knows who he'll give it to. A third person said, do you suppose he'll talk to me about it? Or I wonder what Pastor Richmond has prepared to say to us. They knew what their old Pastor Pillington would have said. He understood how the villagers cherished the story of this special candle. He recognized the people's hard life, crawling out of bed on dark, cold mornings, closing the barn after the sun has set, still had to sew by light in the evening fire, laboring through weeks of rainy, sunless seasons. The old pastor understood that the legend of the candle always lifted their spirit. Would the young pastor speak about the candle? No, I can't do that, the young minister told Edward earlier in the week. I'm not Pillington. I don't preach about candles. People don't need old wives' tale. I know this is the year, but I give people practical help and solid facts. I stay away from mysteries. Do you think God can work however he chooses? I believe God worked, and the rest is up to us. I cannot encourage false hope. I want no part of disappointing people. The candle disappoints people? How can it not? One candle, a village of needs. God would not single out one person and ignore the others. It's not fair. So during the December services, the young minister spoke of Christmas kindness and neighborly love and Christian charity. Most other churches would have appreciated the message, but not the parishioner of St. Mark's. As they left the building, some refused to shake the pastor's hand. Others did so with disappointment. The candle, they asked, did you forget? Bea said to her husband, perhaps it's for the best. People are already so persistent. Edward finished the sentence for her. Persistent indeed, Bea remarked. Persistent they were. One by one, the villagers came to tell the old couple their plights, sickness, financial hardships, etc., etc. They were all desperate. They all have needs, and the candle would solve their problems, so they hoped. The night arrived. Edward's working. He lowered the 30 string into the tub of hot tallow, long enough for the waxy substance to cling, and then lifted them up. As he repeated them again and again, the candles began to thicken. Blame it on the late hour or significant night or both, but Edward grew nostalgic, reflective. How many times have I done this? How many hours in this shop? He asked aloud to no one but himself, because his wife went out to visit a friend. She returned and filled 2 cups with hot tea. She asked her husband, "Can we talk about the candle again? Do we have to give it away? Would it be so bad if we kept it for ourselves?" Edward replied, "Now, Bee, I don't know if it's intended for us. Maybe, since it's the last one, this candle is a gift to the Haddington family. Maybe. Perhaps. The Lord knows we could use a miracle," the two said in silence. "Are you awake?" she finally asked. "Why, certainly," he pledged. Good intentions, however, they gave way to their weary bodies. Little by little, their eyelids dropped and heads lowered. This is December 17. This was 1 week before Christmas. The light woke them. Brilliant, explosive, and shocking light. December midnight became July noonday. Edward needed a moment to come to his senses. He couldn't remember why he was sleeping in a chair and not in his bed. As Edward rubbed his eyes with his heels of hand, Bee nudged him. Her whisper had force. "Edward, the angel." He looked straight into the light, squinting as if looking into the sun. He distinguished a silhouette. The angel lifted an illuminated hand and paused as if to make certain the couple was watching. He took a step in the direction of the wreck. Edward and Bee leaned forward. The angel touched a candle toward the end of the 3rd row and then disappeared. The candle glowed for a few seconds against the now darkened room. As the light diminished, Bee urged, "Edward, the candle." If only he had kept his eyes on it, if only he hadn't looked away to see where the angel went, if only his foot hadn't gone to sleep, then the calamity might have been averted, but it wasn't. Edward took a step on his tingling foot and lost his balance. As he fell face forward, he thrust one hand high in the air, hoping to grab the just-touched candle. Instead, he hit the rack and knocked it off the hooks, sending all 30 candles, 30 identical candles, flying around the room. Edward looked at Bee. Bee looked down at Edward, horrified. They sprang to their feet and raced around the shop, examining candles in the hope that one of them might contain a glimmer of light. But none did. After a few moments, both plopped into the chairs, hands full of candles. Neither had the slightest notion which candle had been touched by the angel. Bee burst into tears. "Now what? We have 30 candles. One of them is special, and we don't know which." She buried her face in her hands. Edward stared at the floor. As the shock wore off, Bee spoke up. "You'll have to make a new batch for tomorrow's service. We cannot risk giving away the angel candle." "I will. We'll save this batch until we know what to do." So Bee set the 30 candles in a basket, and Edward got busy in the shop. December 18. During the service, every eyes were on them. Some asked, "Visitors last night? Any candles distributed this week? Come see me tomorrow, B. I'll make biscuits for you." Later that afternoon, Edward decided to go for a walk. "I need to go out for a while, dear. Would you like to come?" B declined. "You go ahead." But as he left the house, she stopped him. "Take these." B handed him the basket of candles from the night before. "Why?" "I don't know. God may tell you what to do with them." Edward stopped by the stable to greet his old friend Adam Patterson. Adam was usually jolly and cheerful and always made Edward feel special. However, today, there was no cheerful shout from him, no slap on the back or offered tea and biscuits. He was sitting on a stool leaning against a wall. "Adam?" Edward hurried to his side. "What's wrong?" His friend didn't look up. "It's my head, Edward. It pounds and pounds." "When did this start?" "Last week. Why didn't you tell me?" "Oh, you've been so busy with the candles." "Have you talked to the pharmacist?" "Well, they don't have doctor in that town." "I have. He has no solution." Adam looked and said, "My father, Edward, do you remember?" Edward remembered. Years before, Adam's father complained of the same symptom and had died within a week. Still looking at Edward, Adam said, "My friend, I know I asked much, but God must have guided you to me for a reason. Tell me, do you still have the candle?" The candle maker pulled the stool next to Adam and said, "I do," he answered. He wasn't lying because he had the candle. He just didn't know which one. But how could he tell Adam what had happened the night before? The pain had paled his friend's face and left his hands trembling. Edward sighed and made his decision. He reached into his basket and handed Adam a candle. "Take this, my friend. God will hear your prayers." Adam's eyes misted with gratitude. Edward's heart clouded with confusion. What had he done? How dare he give hope? But how dare he not? Adam was his friend, and who knows, he might have given his friend the Christmas candle. Edward requested, "Let's keep this a secret." "Whatever you say." After some time, the candlemaker left the stable and continued his walk. He met one after another with desperate needs, and he gave each one a candle and told them to pray. After his walk, he returned home and said little because he didn't know how to explain what had happened to B. He wanted to tell her but couldn't find the words. He merely told her, "I'll be in the shop." He placed the remaining candle with a basket on the table and walked out the door. When Sarah, B's sister, dropped in for afternoon tea, B told her sister about the visit of the angel the night before. Sarah grew quiet. "B," she said, stirring her drink, "if I have any other option, I wouldn't trouble you, but I have none." B extended her hand across the table and covered her sister. "Sarah, what is it?" "I'm married to a dear man, B. He cares as much for me today as the day we married. But even after all these years and all our prayers, he still has no faith. His world consists of what he sees and touches." She paused to dab a tear. "We are living our autumn years, dear sister." B nodded. We are both living with unanswered prayers, are we not? Sarah squeezed Bee's hand. I know you have enough troubles of your own, but I'm thinking of the candle, dear sister. Is there any way? Bee sighed. Let me tell you what happened Saturday night. She described the light and the touch of the angel. When she told about Edward's stumble, the two sisters laughed until they cried. And as they filled the house with happiness, Bee made a decision. She stopped short of telling her husband the whole story. She didn't mention that they didn't know which candle the angel had blessed. Bee reached into the basket. Here, Sarah, for you, for your husband's faith. Sarah clutched the gift to her chest and beamed, her face awash with tears. Perhaps it's best to tell no one for now, Bee said. Of course, replied Sarah. After her sister left, Bee asked herself, how will I explain this to Edward? While she was still contemplating her question, Emily Barstow walked in with her plight and her request. Bee gave in because she cannot refuse to give her hope. Standing at the doorway to their home at that evening, Edward and Bee could see the villagers walking toward the church to attend the usual December Christmas Advent service. Should we go join them? Bee asked. Let's stay home. I need to tell you what I did today. He told it all. Adam's headache, James' request, etc., etc. He said, I gave candle to them all. Have I done a horrible thing? Bee said nothing. Edward thought she was angry. What have I done? He asked. Exactly what I did, she confessed, and then shared the details of her stories. People would be so angry, so hurt. All our friends would think we deceived them. But we didn't mean to mislead anyone, dear. I know, but we did. What would they think when their prayers got unanswered? We should have kept all the candles. And leave the special candle in the basket? Oh, we can't do that either. Bee, we did the only thing we could. We gave candles, hoping to give the right one. There's no other way we can be sure that someone will receive the Christmas candle. So what do we do now? December 19th. Early that morning, Pastor Richmond knocked on the Haddington's door. Bee answered it. Merry Christmas, Pastor. Won't you come in? Edward, I need to speak to you about this candle business, he began. His tone was less than cordial. People expect me to mention it in the Christmas Eve service. Yes, they do. To ask the recipient of the candle to stand. Yes, that's what we usually do. How can I? This is superstition. Have you seen the congregation lately? They're counting on the candle to help them, to save them, to rescue them. It's not the candle that saved them, Pastor. It's the giver of it. This is disastrous. Edward and Bee had never seen him so worked up. You should preach like this, Edward offered. Edward, Bee tried to stop him. What do you mean? The pastor frowned. With passion. Your preaching could use some. A little pulpit fire never burns a church, you know. Why, Pastor Pillington? I'm tired of hearing about Pastor Pillington. The three of them sat in embarrassed silence for a few moments. Edward finally spoke up. What are you afraid of, Pastor? Afraid the prayers won't be answered? Afraid they will? The young pastor started to speak, then stopped. Edward continued in soft yet firm tones. The mystery of God unsettles us all, Pastor. But it's a mystery where God works. If he does only what we understand, is he God? He paused, inviting the pastor to reply. He didn't, nor did he look away. Edward opted for bluntness. Do you fear that God would dash the faith of the people, my son? Or do you fear that he will stretch yours? Pastor Richmond's face softened for a moment. Then it hardened. All this talk of candle of hope, where will it lead us? And your dismissal, all miracles, where will that lead us? The pastor started to object, but B placed a motherly hand on his, and for the first time addressed by his first name. David, something burdens you. What is it? The young minister said nothing at first. Then he began. 4 of us were at a pub. It was a year ago, a year this month. We were celebrating the coming holidays. The winter night was cold and the ale was good and the fire was warm, and so we drank until we became foolish and loud. Patron told us to be quiet. The pub owner threatened to throw us out. I told him my father's name and position and dared him to do so. He didn't hesitate. The next thing I knew, we were standing outside, bracing against the cold. The wind was bitter and I was too. The man had humiliated me in front of my friends. Embarrassment prompted me to do something I'll regret for the rest of my life. I saw an empty delivery wagon in the street, still hitched. So I jumped on and grabbed the rein and told my friends to go with me. They hesitated, so I prodded. What are you, afraid? They finally climbed in. A fast ride it was. I thought a few laughed and we'll return the wagon to where it was. A horrible thing happened. I had no business handling wagon. The wind was so strong, and I was drunk and inexperienced. The wagon went out of control while we were crossing a narrow bridge. The wagon went off the bridge and fell into the icy, dark river. The horses, the wagon, and we all plunged 15 feet into the dark. 3 of us made it to the river's edge. We frantically looked for the 4th friend, George. We stomped up and down the bank, crying out his name, crying out to God. We had to abandon the search. We were freezing. We found a house and got help. They located his body next morning. The trio sat in silence for a long time. B was the first to speak. I'm so sorry, son. You must be heartbroken. More than you can imagine. I was so stupid, so childish. I got what I deserved. But my friend, he didn't deserve to die. I suppose that's why I see God in the fashion that I do. He turned and looked straight at me, lower lip quivering. God could have helped. He should have helped. I used to think he hears us when we pray. But I prayed that night with all my heart. Now I don't know anymore. This is how you ended up in Gladstone? Edward asked. Richmond nodded. We should have been expelled. My father intervened, however. But the professor made clear that I never know the likes of a preferred pulpit. I guess Gladstone is my penance. Or, Edward adjusted, Gladstone is where you find forgiveness. B told her husband, we should tell him about Abigail. Pastor puzzled. Abigail? B went on telling the pastor about the granddaughter who used to live with them who ran away a year ago. Friends saw her in London. Why did she run away? B answered. She made a mistake and thought we would not be able to forgive her. B walked across the room and lifted a candle from the basket. I guess we all need Christmas miracles, don't we, David? She handed the candle to the minister. Take this, my son. You need some light. He smiled. I don't think I should. Just take it. He placed the candle in his coat and stood to leave. As Edward opened the door, he made a request. Follow the tradition in the Christmas Eve service. Who knows what might happen? Edward and B watched him walk away. Then Edward closed the door. B, Edward said, we have one more candle. She knew his thought and smiled. He set the candle in the holder. The two sat at the table and prayed. They prayed for forgiveness, faith, and a young girl. December 24th. The candle basket was now empty. All 30 hopeful villagers guarded the candles and secrets and looked for a miracle. A 10-year-old girl prayed for her arguing parents. The family of a sailor prayed for his safe arrival. A wife prayed for her husband to sober up. Pastor Richmond had never seen so many weekday visitors stopping to pray. As the Christmas Eve service drew nigh, however, Edward and Bee expressed occasional bouts with doubts. What will happen to us? What will people do when they realize we gave them common candles? Bee asked. Do you think your uncle in Preston could give us a place to live? Edward teased. Credibility, friends, candle shop, we would lose it all, Bee sighed. In the church, the couple found some space in the back pew. The church was beautifully decorated. A row of Edward's candle flickered on the windows. The children's nativity play was in full swing. A homemade doll rested in the manger, and a lamb kept bumping over with her nose. Laughter and applause bounced off the church stone walls. Pastor Richmond began his welcome. We thank the ladies who cleaned the floors, our men who repaired the door. We appreciate the Haddingtons for the window candles. Several heads swiveled and looked at the couple. Edward and Bee kept their eyes on the minister. This is my first Christmas Eve service with you, the pastor continued. I understand that the church traditionally begins this gathering with testimonies and announcements of blessings. We have all been blessed, far more than we deserve, yet I am told that among us sits one person who has benefited from an angel's touch. He paused, looked over the audience, and invited, Could I ask that soul to stand? Edward and Bee gulped. She closed her eyes. He took her hand and whispered, Oh, we'll be all right, dear. He bowed his head and offered a silent prayer. Lord, these are your people, your flock. Look with kindness upon this moment. He heard the congregation begin to murmur. What is this? Someone asked aloud. Another wondered, How can this be? Then a third, What's going on? Edward assumed the worst. Probably no one is standing. But when he and Bee opened their eyes, they couldn't believe what they saw. People standing all over the sanctuary. Richard Richmond took a step back from the pulpit. I don't understand. Why so many of you? Villagers began asking for permission to say a word. The minister called a farmer on the front row. You know me, Edward, he turned and spoke across the crowd. I cannot resist the bottle, but since you gave me the candle, I've been here in prayer each evening. Why the others are standing, I cannot say, but I haven't touched a drop in 4 days. Pastor, requested another man, may I? The young minister nodded, and James stood. My landlord and I have been at odds for months about the rent. But last Sunday, Edwards gave me candle. The missus and I prayed, and yesterday the landlord came to me and said, Who am I to make demands? Apart from God's mercy, I would have nothing. And then he gave me a clean slate and said he'd extend more credit if I needed it. Next, Adam spoke, and then Widow Lanner spoke. One by one, all those who stood up testified the prayers being answered. Edward and Bee watched with wide eye and listened with happy hearts. Finally, Edward stood. I need to say something. So he walked down the aisle, turned, and looked into the weathered faces of all the villagers. Digging his hand deep into his pocket, he began. Tonight, the angel came. Something happened no one expected. He told them the story, every detail. The deep slumber, the glowing light, the tingling foot, and the fall. All chuckle at this point. Who has the real Christmas candle? Only God knows. But He does know. And I know He uses the mistakes of stumblers like me. He casts a knowing glance at the pastor. And He has heard all our prayers. Perhaps we trusted the candle too much. Perhaps we trusted God too little. So God took our eyes off the candle and set them on Himself. He is the candle of Christmas and Gladstone. Gladstone is one of His Bethlehems, for He has come to us all. A chorus of amens boomed in the church. At this point, the entrance door slammed open, and a disheveled man ran in screaming, "Help! Someone help!" Edward, with a clear view from his aisle seat, recognized the man as the driver of the coach wagon. Eyes clung to his beard, and fear hung from his words. Gasping for breath, he sputtered, "One side of the bridge, Collin Bridge, it gave way, and my passengers, they fell over the side. I looked for them, but it's too dark." "Them?" Pastor Richmond asked. "A girl and her baby," the man said. Pastor Richmond spun toward the front of the church. "Hurry! The creek is shallow. She may be all right. All able-bodied, come with me." Clouds blocked the stars and wind howled through the trees when the search party arrived at the creek. Edward wrapped the scarf around his face and felt a stab of dread in his heart. Could anyone survive this cold? He wondered to himself. He and the pastor were the first to leave the church. The pastor grabbed a lit lantern and hung by the exit, and Edward followed. They hurried to the site and saw the wagon was still suspended on the side of the bridge. The bridge tilted because one of the old beam was weakened and gave way. "Hurry, Edward, let's search downstream." Edward caught up with Richmond, who was illuminating the slope with a lantern. "Be careful, Edward, it's muddy." "I'm okay," he assured. "Just glad I wasn't holding the lantern." "Any idea who the girl is?" Richmond yelled over the wind. "No." "Hello," they cried, "hello," but they heard nothing. The two were in the water as much as out of it. The steep slope and trees left them the slenderest path. The water soon soaked the boots, numbing their legs from the knees down. Pastor Richmond, with the lantern, led the way. Careful not to advance too far ahead of Edward, he paused often to yell, "Are you still there?" "Yes, yes," Edward assured. As it turned out, it was Pastor Richmond who took the fall. He ventured around a tree by stepping into the water, one hand on the trunk and the other holding the lantern. His foot slipped, and he and the lantern fell into the stream. Edward saw the pastor splash and stop in the abrupt darkness. Oh, I'm fine, Edward, I'm fine," he heard the minister assure. Through the dark night, Edward made out the form of the minister struggling to his feet and back to the shore. "We lost our light," the minister was upset. They heard the water rushing, leaves rustling, and then from downstream, a call for help. "Edward, did you hear that?" "I did." The call came again. This time Edward responded, "We are coming." "But I can't see one step ahead of me." "Feel your way forward." The minister didn't budge. "I can't move. This is too familiar. The cold, the darkness, the water. Oh God," he pleaded, "not again." Edward placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't give up on God, son." The young minister folded his arms and shivered. As he did, he felt something in his coat. A candle. The candle Edward had given him earlier. "Do you have a match, Edward?" "A match? I found a candle in my pocket." "Oh, it would do no good," he told the pastor. "The flame cannot withstand the wind." "Well, it may for a moment, and a moment of light is better than none." Edward reached for the matches he kept to light his pipe. "Let's lean together and block the wind." The two stood side by side as Edward struck the match. It flared, then disappeared. "Closer, stand closer to me," the candlemaker instructed. Both men bent at the waist. Richmond held the candle as still as he could with his shaking hands. The match flame touched the wick and then expired. "It's wet," Edward explained. "One more time," Pastor Richmond urged. So Edward took another match, struck it, and held it toward the candle. The minister cupped his hand around the wick. The flame held, dancing for a moment. "I think it's going to light." Oh, it did more, much more. Before the two men could straighten, radiant exploded. The light of a dozen torches pushed back the darkness. A bonfire couldn't have been brighter. Edward could see the wide-eyed and dropped jaw of the minister. "What's happening?" Richmond asked. "A miracle's happening, son. Hurry, this light tends to pass quickly." Pastor Richmond reached the girl first. She was on the ground, huddled against a tree, clutching a bundle to her breast. "Looks like she was trying to find her way out," Richmond suggested. He squatted and placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Are you all right?" No response. "Is she alive?" Edward asked. Richmond removed his glove, lifted her chin, and placed 2 fingers beneath her scarf. He scarcely breathed as he felt for a pulse. He never got one, but didn't need one because the girl started to groan. "She's alive, Edward." Richmond turned his attention to the child. He lifted the blanket and placed a hand beneath the small nose. "This one is fine too, sound asleep, likely better off than the mother." Noises emerged from behind them. "What is this light?" a villager asked as he and 4 others hurried to help. "An answered prayer, Charles," Edward smiled. "Let's get these 2 out of the cold." They arrived at Sarah's house. She had a blazing fire waiting for them. "She's drifting in and out of consciousness. She must have hit her head," one of the villager, Mr. Chumpley, said. "Well, let me have the baby." Sarah took the baby, and the other carried the mother into the small sitting room and placed her near the fire. Edward came in, and within moments, all the Gladstone villagers was in the room or on the porch. Bea placed a warm blanket over the girl's shoulder. "We'll let you rest a bit, then get you out of these wet clothes." As of yet, no one had seen the young mother's face. It was completely scarf wrapped, leaving room only for a set of eyes that Edward noticed seemed to grow wider by the moment. There, there," Mother Bea comforted, offering a cup of tea. "This will help. Let me take your wrap." Bea unwrapped the scarf as one unwrapped a gift, and what Bea saw was the finest gift she could have imagined. "Abigail!" Edward leaned forward from the fire. Sarah gasped. Mr. Chumley shook his head. "It's Abigail." "Abigail?" Pastor asked everyone. "My granddaughter," Edward explained, as he knelt by the chair and embraced his prodigal child. Bea joined him, and for the first time in too long, the 3 held each other and wept. Abigail finally pushed back. "Papa, grandmother, where's my baby?" Sarah handed her the child. Abigail slipped the blanket away from the baby's face. "I name him Edward." Whisper of the news and name ripped across the room and out the door to the man on the porch. Edward looked up and searched out the eyes of Pastor Richmond. "Looks like God still gives babies at Christmas," he winked. "And light," the minister agreed. "He still gives light when we need it the most." The story reminds us of over 2,000 years ago. It was an ordinary night with ordinary sheep and ordinary shepherds. Then the black sky exploded with brightness. Trees that had been shadows jumped into clarity. Sheep that had been silent became a chorus of curiosity. 1 minute the shepherd was dead asleep. The next, they were rubbing their eyes and staring into the face of an alien, declaring a coming, an arrival, an advent. Christmas remembers God showing up on the earth, in our little earth, not showing off with angel-driven chariots or magic kingdom fireworks, but showing up on a donkey with a carpenter in the belly of a peasant girl. Christmas commemorates God's most uncommon decision to come commonly. Common folks like us wonder if he still shows up amidst the sleepy moments of life. This story, the Christmas candle, welcomes such wonderings. If he came to Bethlehem, might he not come to us? And if he touched the world of the shepherds, the carpenter, wouldn't he also touch our world? I think so. Merry Christmas.